I don't want to be next. I first noticed that something was wrong when Cynthia showed up at my door on a rainy Thursday night. "Can I spend the night here?" she'd asked, without preamble. I remember looking at her pallid complexion, the pink and reddish tint beneath her eyes and her nose, and thinking, whoa, she really needs this. She really... I waited until we were back in the living room, with her tucked under some warm throws and sipping on the hot tea, before I asked, "Are you okay?" Her eyes immediately brimmed with tears, and I caught a heart-wrenching look of vulnerability and helplessness. I caught the terrible fear tainting her expression too. I just need to not be alone tonight," she said, looking down at her tea, her lower lip quivering. That night I struggled to fall asleep. I was used to my privacy and didn't know what to do about having someone lying there on the floor. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but I couldn't help hearing Cynthia's muffled sobs beneath the blanket. My heart went out to her. Whatever she was going through, it must be bad. "I don't see you. You can't make me. You can't touch me. You can't hurt me." She was repeating those words over and over again. Someone has been hurting her, I thought, frowning. My heart froze as I saw what looked like a pale, bony hand on her back. I choked back a scream, turning away in horror and disbelief, then looked again. There was nothing there. Her black shirt did have a patch of white on the back, what looked like an accidental sun-bleaching incident from leaving her shirt out in the sun for too long. I breathed out a huge sigh of relief, a bubble of nervous laughter nearly escaping my throat before I forced it back down. Her fear was getting to me, playing tricks on my eyes. After that night, Cynthia didn't drop by anymore, but I popped by her place to check on her from time to time just to make sure she was all right and that no one was around trying to hurt her. She seemed frailer and sicker by the day, but declined to see a doctor, no matter how many times I urged her to. I was worried for her, but my life was getting hectic at that time, so I didn't really have much time to dwell on it beyond showing up once in a while with some muffins and whatnot. But one day I was awoken in the middle of the night by the sounds of someone screaming and the voices of two men. I sprung out of bed, grabbed the baseball bat by my bed for good measure, and ran to the door, flinging it open, bat up at the ready. I was greeted by the sight of Cynthia screaming and struggling with two police officers who were trying their best to calm her down. One of the police officers was restraining her as gently as he could, saying firmly, "Ma'am, there's nothing there. No one is here. You're safe." They all turned to look at me as I charged into the hallway holding my baseball bat. We stared at each other in confusion and surprise for a moment before I immediately lowered my bat. The translucent, almost transparent form of an old lady began to trace its outline into the air. I paused, feeling the world come to a screeching halt as she seemed to shimmer into existence. I said old lady, but this was no old lady I'd ever seen. She was standing facing me head-on, dressed in an old floral garb, one of those you often see on grannies in TV shows set in the 80s, just floral and pastel and innocuous. Her face, though, was far from innocuous. She didn't have eyes. I mean, she had eye sockets, but that was it. Just two empty holes that seemed drilled into her face. They weren't bloody, just empty eye sockets that seemed to have healed over and dried up. Her nose was just a gash on her face, right in the middle of that gaunt, almost skeletal face. I say almost because there was flesh all right, and skin, just not how you would expect healthy flesh and skin to be. This was graying, ashy skin stretched over bones. Her mouth was odd, like a child's depiction of how a mouth should look like. Two oddly formed, tightly knit lips that were slapped onto her withered face. She seemed to be looking right into my soul, with her eye sockets. I think I was frozen in place for too long, for Cynthia suddenly jerked me out of my horrified silence with a yell tinged with hope. "You see her too!" I forced a confused look onto my face and looked away from that creature, straight at Cynthia, with both cops watching me closely. "I'm sorry, Cynthia. There's really no one there. I really tried to look. There's no one." I saw the bubble of hope on Cynthia's face burst and watched as her expression crumbled into one of despair, rage and terror. It broke my heart. I nearly teared, but I held the tears back. "No, you saw her. I saw your face. You saw her. I know it. Tell them, tell them." Cynthia began kicking and screaming again. The cops looked relieved. I think for a moment they might have sensed something there, or saw from my face that something could possibly have been there. With my denial, they had the go-ahead to go right back to the life they knew, to the facts of the world that they were certain of. I'm sorry, Cynthia. I'm so sorry," I said, and turned away from her. I grabbed my baseball bat and went back to my apartment, closing the door behind me. The commotion lasted for a long 10 minutes or so before I heard some other personnel arrive at the scene, probably medics, and they carried her away, screeching and wailing, directing occasional insults at me, insults like traitor, coward, liar. I just listened wordlessly, filled with shame and gripped with an unbreakable dread, until everything fell silent again. I turned to call to her, to apologize, to say something, anything, when I saw it again. The malformed old lady. It was following her, walking so close to her, its head was right above her left shoulder. It turned its head a full 180 to face me, its neck obviously not restricted by the physical limits humans faced. Then it smiled again, tearing yet another rip into its lips, and it held up a finger once more. I ground to a halt. Suddenly all hollowed out, yet brimming with a viscous fear, I walked away from her once again, literally turning my back on her. I still see Cynthia sometimes, though less and less so. She hardly seems to leave her apartment nowadays. In fact, I haven't seen her for a whole week, and the mail at her mailbox is piling up and spilling over. I know I should go and check on her, but I can't. I feel like I almost physically can't. I think of taking those few steps next door, and my body freezes up. I honestly do not know what to do. I'm thinking of just moving, putting Cynthia out of my mind forever. Try to suppress the guilt, shove it down so hard that it curls up into a ball and rolls to a back corner of my mind where it can stay buried under tons of distractions. I know that what I've done, what I will keep doing, it will weigh on me for the rest of my life. It will be the one thing I'm ashamed of, that I can't shake. But I don't have a choice, do I? What could I have done? What can I do? Thank you for joining me today. I'll be uploading new stories every day, so subscribe to stay tuned. I'll be keeping up to date with all of the newest, most interesting stories I can find. See you soon, and remember, stay vigilant and stay safe.